All right. Well, there's a couple things just to get us started. I'm hoping that you can see my screen. It looks like all right, great. And then it sounds like you can all hear me. There's a couple things too that you can do to just participate well today. There's a chat function that Zoom has that you could pull up, and that would be a good spot if you wanted to write a question, or if something pops up for you where you don't know what you're doing, or you have a question, or like a tech issue. We'll see if we can resolve it there. Um, and it seems like all of you have gotten in, so you figured out how to use Chrome or downloaded the app as you needed. We still have a couple more join. This is great. We've got a good group of us here. All right. Um, well, while we're still kind of getting acquainted, let me just orient you to what we're doing. So, as we are thinking about this transition that we're in, the Counseling Center really wanted to take a turn towards wellness and think about ways that we can interact with one another and be present with one another and support one another in this time. And so, each week, you can expect a wellness webinar series, which I think will be a lot of fun. Today, obviously, we've already begun, and you're doing this now with me. And then each week going forward on Wednesdays, we're going to host them at 4:30. I'm really excited. Next week, we have Carly Hodge, one of our counseling interns, who will be doing one on the Enneagram and social distancing, which is going to be super interesting, I think. So it'll be great. If you're into the Enneagram, it'll be a good start. If you are not into the Enneagram, you have no idea what that word is, don't worry. You can still hang on, and we can help you with that too. So, um, there will be some good links and things like that. The other thing is, I have on the side, if you would like, I'm gonna record this, and it's recording, and it'll upload to YouTube, and we'll have that available on our YouTube channel called Trinity Community Videos. But if you're somebody who would prefer having the slides, that's totally okay too. So you can just write your name into the or your email into the chat box on the what's on the right side of my screen. You can write your name into that, and then later I can send you some slides. So we can get it going that way. Um, all right. Well, let's get started. So I think just to kind of take a moment to breathe together and think about what just happened, right? So a couple weeks ago, we had just gotten back from spring break, and then we were starting in classes, and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday came around, and then Thursday, all of a sudden, something changed, right? And all of a sudden, we thought we were doing classes the way we normally were, and we were in the midst of kind of the craze of just what it means to be back in spring break and headed towards the end of the semester. And then we learned that this kind of global crisis was coming quite local, right? And then all of a sudden everything kind of changed on us, and the structure that we once had and the routine that we once had changed on us. And so that was hard, I imagine, for lots. I know it was for me, right? Where you think you have a certain schedule going, and then it changes. And so I think it's worth just noting that we've all been through something huge, and we are at the point where we're restarting, right? Like, in restarting about kind of the way we're thinking about going forward. And so when we restart, sometimes it's good to go back to the basics. And so that's what we're doing today. As I've had a chance to talk with a handful of students, there's been a few things that I've heard simultaneously, and I wonder if any of this might be you. I've heard things like this. I'm struggling with the lack of structure, or I'm so behind, I don't even know where to begin, or I don't do well with a bunch of open time, or I've become so anxious since all this began, I don't feel like I have any control. All of that is, I would say, normal. Like, as we once had our structure and then now we don't. And so it's hard to figure out where to begin. And sometimes in the midst of that, we can actually feel a little bit anxious in that, right? Especially if we found some comfort in kind of our structure and routine. And so my hope today is to give us some pointers to reset some routine for us. And hopefully that'll help us with our rhythm. Routines are important. I imagine that a lot of you at some point in your life can think about how routine has helped you. And it helps us with things like it helps us fight dips in mood. So thinking about us, that anxiety that I just named, but it also helps us fight kind of some depression, right? Where we might feel depression can really kind of come up when we're feeling like maybe purposeless or aimless. That can be really challenging. And so it helps us fight those dips in our mood. It can also encourage productivity, right? Like when you have a structure or a routine, it can encourage us to be productive in the midst of a time where it feels like, where am I headed and what is my next task? Especially if you have lots of tasks, or maybe especially if you're not even quite sure what your tasks are anymore. That's where the routine can help. And it just, for me at least, I think just on a personal note, when I lose some structure or routine, I think I get really lost in that procrastination feeling, right? So like it's kind of that sense of what am I doing today? Oh, I haven't started doing it. Oh, I'm behind already. Oh, I've procrastinated. Now I feel bad about that. And it just kind of goes on and on. So I don't know if anybody else is like that, but that's definitely how I am. I think it's also valuable to learn from other people during this time. And so what can we learn from kiddos? So children need and thrive on routine. So in fact, because of this, when we think about having been at school, and if you think about the time that you were in school, like I'm talking about grade school or elementary school, you had routine that probably changed every 15 to 30 minutes. And I've learned that with my own son, as he has things that change every 30 minutes on him. You know, he's working on fine motor skills and then gross motor skills and then reading and then circle time. So he has this routine that kind of goes throughout. So, you know, he's only like a year and a half. So he's going to, like, basically his entire life he's had routine, right? And will continue to have routine. So I think we can learn something valuable about that from kids, about why that's important for us. And so I encourage you that if you don't have a good routine, to start one, and then I'll give you some pointers about what that could look like. Just in case you didn't know that this was my son, beep. This is him reading his book. If you take a really good look at the book, it's upside down. Felt like it was just like an obligatory thing to include that. All right, so what are some routines and pointers for setting a routine? And again, if you have any questions, you can put them over on the side. I love that most people are actually generally reacting to, so cute, adorable, thinking about little Theo. One note when we think about routine is to be intentional. And so I say this and actually encourage you to think through how your routine could be set the night before. I think if you really start to get into this routine sort of structure, you might actually start doing that the week before. But I think there's something really useful about doing it the night before, where we are, even before we head to bed, we're kind of writing through, what are the things on my mind? One, that can help you mind dump just a little bit, where you get everything kind of onto a piece of paper that you need to. But the second thing is that sometimes if you don't actually get your routine together before the day starts, chances are your day will kind of go through a couple hours, and then you'll realize that you either wasted some time or you already feel behind before you already began. I don't know if you've had days like this where I wanted to be really productive on a Saturday, like errands or something like that, but I woke up and I was in my pajamas till like 10 or 11, and then I realized I was hungry. So then I can't go to the store because I'm hungry, so I need to eat. And then by the time I realize that, it's like 3 and I haven't done anything. I still haven't done the grocery store, right? So it just kind of goes on and on and on. So writing that kind of before you start your day can be a really helpful way of doing that. I can see in some of our comments that some people are agreeing, right? Like to do that beforehand. So here's some things that you would maybe write down. And at the very end of today, I actually have a sample schedule that I actually did for myself last night into today, just preparing so you guys can actually have. Kind of some basics, right? Set your alarm. You probably set your alarm on the regular kind of routine of a workday, or you probably set your alarm on when you were thinking about having school, depending on what you were doing and what you were managing. So keep doing that. You can adjust it some if you don't need to have a commute. That's great, but set your alarm and get that going. And then the second thing is to get dressed. What a simple thing, right? But there's that difference of being in your pajamas versus being in a pair of jeans and a shirt, right? Like, I think that feels different. We know that because we know how we feel when we go for a job interview or when we go to something special, right? Like when we dress up, we actually feel it kind of inside us. That same thing happens if you wear your sweats all day, which is great for a Saturday. But you do that on a day where you want to be really productive, it's going to feel like you're not super productive internally, and it probably will mean that you won't be quite as productive too. The other thing is just to keep good nutrition. What a simple but small thing, but also an important thing as we're kind of thinking about coronavirus too, right? Just continue eating well. Some pointers around this is to set aside a few good times to eat when you're not in front of a screen, right? So I wouldn't be eating now as much as I would be breaking, and I would maybe go somewhere else and I would maybe be with somebody or just be without a screen and just enjoy food, be mindful of that. And then I can return to my work. I'd also make meal or snack time a break. I mean, that allows you to do that when you step away from your screen. It actually makes it a break. One of the things that we've done in student life that was recommended by Becky Starkenberg, who's here on this call, by the way, which is a lot of fun, is to actually take a break together. And so from 12 to 1, although we're all in our different places, we take a break for the most part if we can, and we don't call each other, and we're not emailing, and we're like actually just kind of settling and going for a walk or being with our family. And sometimes when you take a break communally, it can help because there's not the expectation that you'd be available either. So if you can do that in your family, wonderful. If you can do that with your friends, that would also be helpful, or anybody else that you might be working with or coworkers. Even if it's like a group project that you're working on, pause it so that everybody can go eat, right? The other thing is to be strategic with your energy. Take a note about when you tend to have the most energy. A lot of people here will say that they probably have more energy in the morning than they would in the afternoon. And so if that's you, plan some of your harder tasks in the morning and leave some of your easier tasks in the evening or in the afternoon, right? So for me, if I've got something big, like I was preparing for this webinar today, I'm not going to plan that in the afternoon when I'm starting to feel like I need coffee and I'm losing my steam. I'm going to write emails that are simple, or I'm going to listen to some simple things, or I'm going to do some tasks that I can do without having to think too hard. But I'm going to put my harder tasks in the morning so that I can get myself kind of going for the day. And then part of it is if you know you totally lose energy in the afternoon, just embrace it. That's a good time to go for a walk, right? So if you know around 3 o'clock that you just don't have a ton of energy, don't feel guilty about that. Just count it as a break and allow yourself to go walk and to enjoy that time. The other thing is to sprinkle in some activity. And I have some fun ways that you can do that actually Trinity's community is kind of wrapping around. I've talked about going for a walk, and you can also do some yoga. Actually, even today, I've learned that we might get some yoga on our Trinity community page, led by Dr. Marilyn Colosimo. So that'll be a lot of fun. But one of our coaches, Coach Eric Sally, on our soccer team, men's soccer team, has been leading home workouts. And you can even see here, he's been doing it with his son over there to the left of him. And they're a lot of fun. He records them live, and then He also has them on YouTube if you want to look at that too. So it's a great way to be active. One of the other things to put in your routine is connection with others. Some of you may just be naturally it's really easy for you to connect by phone. It's not really hard for you to pick up your phone and call somebody. But for others of you, particularly if you've grown up in a time where texting was a primary way of kind of starting a conversation, it may feel like it's a big deal to call somebody, or like it's a bigger deal than it needs to be. But now it's just so important to hear people's voices. And if you can, to see their faces, even if we can't spend time with one another. And so if you can do that kind of in your day, and particularly in your day when you are feeling less productive, go ahead and put a time in there where you might call somebody that you haven't talked to. It might be good for you, right? You might need to reach out to somebody, but I'd also encourage you to think about who might need you, right? So who, maybe a neighbor or a family member or a sibling or somebody in your life that might actually need to hear from you. And it would be good for their heart and good for their soul to hear from you. That does two things. One, it actually joins somebody in their own process and helps them. But secondly, it helps you feel useful, right? Like you actually feel like, oh, like I matter to somebody, right? Like if you kind of reach out and are reminded that you are a great connector and you're great at connecting with people, and it's good to call people. And so it kind of helps you in a couple different ways, which I think is really important. So it's that idea of by helping others or doing things for others, it's really important. Kind of continuing on, the other encouragement is to limit screen time before bed. I tend to I confess when I feel like I don't do things really well. So this is where I'm going to asterisk and confess something. So last night I was actually preparing this, and I did not cut my screen off before I went to bed. In fact, I was working on it, and I was working on it a bit later, and then I went to bed, and sure enough, what did I dream about? I dreamt about this webinar because I didn't give myself enough space to wind down away from my screen. I had been working on this and hadn't actually stepped away. So this is my true confession, but also an encouragement that I won't do that tonight. And then I would encourage you to not do that tonight too. So if you can, step away from your screen, and it's really helpful. A good benchmark is an hour of time. And that would be good to step away and to read, especially if you can get a hard copy book in your hand. But just being able to step away for a little bit can be really helpful in you being able to wind down. I probably don't need to name the science for you because we've actually heard so much good stuff about that. So I'm just going to encourage you to remember that and to leave yourself some time there before you go to bed. And one important thing too, as we're thinking through just being on our screens so much more often than we used to, right? So it's even more important to put some habits around our screen time. As we keep going, at the end of the day, do it all over again, right? So I encouraged you earlier on to set your schedule for yourself the night before. And this is a good time to kind of take in your day. How did it go? Did your routine work for you? Did it not work for you? If it didn't work for you, depending on your personality type, it might be easy to maybe be frustrated a little bit, or maybe a little bit disappointed, or perhaps feeling guilty. And I'm going to encourage you to not feel that way, and to just kind of take it in that maybe the day didn't go as planned. Maybe you're new at this routine thing, and you didn't realize that you would feel such a lack of energy at 10 a.m. in the morning, and you thought you'd be raring to go, and you weren't. That's okay. I would extend yourself grace and compassion and just redo it the next day. I think you can restart every day if you have a day that wasn't as productive, or if it didn't go as well. And I think that's the beauty sometimes of sleep, and then opening up and starting the next day again. I think that's a gift for us that we have, and I'd encourage you to step into that. I imagine you would do the same thing for somebody else, right? You'd extend that same grace towards somebody else. So do it for yourself too. So as we're actually kind of ending our time together, but I wanted to show you an example routine, which, like I said, I had pulled up. Was for myself yesterday. Um, as I thought about kind of my Thursday routine, which more or less has gone. I actually realized I forgot to write the webinar in my actual routine, but here we are webinaring. And so this is an example routine. As I even kind of searched the internet, if you've done this for yourself, you're going to find a lot for children and kind of how to keep children kind of maintain energy throughout the day. I couldn't find quite as many for college students or for professionals, so I thought I would do my own. So here's a sneak peek into what my day looks like, but I think a helpful routine that I will just adjust going forward, right? Okay, so I'm going to leave that up, but I'm going to leave some room for questions. So we have a few minutes. So are there any questions or comments? And I've been reading some of them as we've been talking. It looks like a lot of people are kind of agreeing with that idea about the screen time. And then I can see some good interactions around leaving that lunch hour open. I see a recommendation for Brene Brown, of course. Thank you, Julie, for talking about it being aesthetically pleasing. It might have been my third draft just because the first one looked like something I wouldn't want somebody else to see. So any questions or comments that I can answer for us or think about for us, you can chat them you can write them in the chat box. Oh, great. I can see some good things. So Diana said that she created a journal bin so that everybody in the family can quickly grab a journal. That's awesome. If you can see Diana, she's got journals up for her. That is awesome. That's great. Oh, and Elizabeth, I can see your comment about the platform. That's wonderful. Julie has a question about a reading list. Julie, I'm curious if you'd say more. Do you mean like kind of like a fiction reading list, as in like kind of how to break, or just like a kind of a Brene Brown type reading list? I'd be curious when you write that in there. Oh, maybe some de-stressing sort of things. Yeah, I could see that being really helpful. Yeah. Yeah, actually kind of good news. So related to these wellness webinars, we're starting to develop like a resource guide or area where we have some things. And so we're developing that where we can have some books, and maybe it could be something where you could also contribute yourself, whatever's been helpful. Kind of another way to like help others. All right. Just seeing if there's any other questions. Well, I'm going to leave a little bit more time for questions, but I'm going to pop down here just to put this up here again in case you didn't have that before. To think about our next wellness webinar for next week, and just a reminder that it'll be on Trinity Community Videos. This recording will be later this evening probably. Oh, and then Megan has a question. So any tips for students creating a schedule away from campus life? Most of us have been doing video calls. Oops, I can't see it all the way at night. Oh, that's a great question. Julia said that she plans using your day using a whiteboard that she can see. That's awesome. Great. Yeah, I'd say kind of a similar idea, right? So thinking about a schedule away from campus life. Yeah, actually, there's quite a bit away from campus life, right? Like I'd encourage you, like as your own list, there's a lot of it that probably doesn't have much to do with your campus life. And so so I could see like making it work. The reason why, if you think about the title of this, is a flexible routine that would match kind of what you actually have going on in your own world. Some of which might revolve around campus life, but some of it may not either. So, so that could be really helpful. Okay. All right. Well, I think we have neared the end for today. Thank you so much for kind of tuning in and logging in. Look out for this if you'd like. And whoops, Zoom is giving us a gift apparently. And if you're interested in next week, we'll see you next week with Carly. She'll be leading us on our next webinar. So thanks so much. It was great to see you guys. Talk later, okay?